Lesson 3-2, Fractions, Circles, and Equivalents. The main focus in this lesson is for you to use fraction circle pieces to model fractions. For you to share your different ways to model these fractions equivalent to 1/2. For you to model and record names for fractions equivalent to 1/3. And to model and record names for equivalent fractions and look for number patterns in equivalent fraction pairs. But before we get too much into that, let's go ahead and let's do some mental math and fluency. Round 67,549 to the nearest 10,000. Remember, you have your place value chart and the magnets at the front of the room on the whiteboard to help you with this activity. So if we're looking at rounding it to the nearest 10,000, you should look at, this is ones, tens, hundreds, thousands, 10,000s. You should underline that number. The number to the right of it tells you what you should do with that number. You either leave it alone or you round up one place value. So look at your roller coaster chart. Does the 7 tell you to round it up or to let it alone? Hopefully you noticed that it told you to round it up. So to round 6 up one place is to 7, and then every other number after that becomes a 0. Don't forget to put your comma in the right place so you know how to say the number. And hopefully now you're realizing that your answer is 70,000. So again, when it tells you to round to the nearest thousands, you should first go back to your number and you should underline the thousands place. Ones, tens, hundreds, thousands. Again, the number to the right of it tells you what to do with the 7. Look at your roller coaster chart. Should you round up or should you leave it alone? Good, I hope you noticed that 5 is the midpoint way in your numbers, and 5 is telling you to round that up to an 8. Now, we can't remember the 6 is there. That still needs to be in our number, but everything to the right of that number after the 8 becomes a 0. So our number should be 68,000, and we did it right. All right, and our final number tells us to round to the hundreds place. Again, you should know place value and what they are by now. So we look at ones, tens, hundreds, underline it. Draw an arrow from the number to the right of it so you know what to do with that 5. So should I leave it alone or should I round it up? I'm hoping you realize 4 on down, I leave it alone. The numbers before it then stay the same, but the numbers that come after it turn to zeros. So if I rounded it to the nearest hundreds place, you should have realized, oh, excuse me on that one. You should have realized that your number rounds to 67,500. Use the fraction circles that you cut out earlier to answer the following questions. How many dark green did it take to cover the red circle? Hopefully you realize that it took 5. How many of the purples to cover the red circle? If you didn't do this yet, please pause the recording so that you can try this out so you understand what I'm saying. It should have taken 10. And how many light greens did it take to cover the red circle? Pause the recording if you need to find out. You should have found out that it took 12. So, using the fraction circles to answer the following questions. How many dark greens did it take? Again, you should have discovered 5. How many purples? The 10. And how many light greens? The 12. So look at what fraction then of the circle was dark green. Each dark green piece represented 1/5. Okay, even though it took 5, each green piece was 1 out of 5. And again, for the purples, 10. So each piece would be 1 out of 10. And finally, the light greens, we said it took 12. So each piece is worth 1/12. Understand that since it took 5 to cover it, that the fraction it took to cover the entire circle was 5/5. The fraction of the purples to cover the entire circle would be 10/10. And the fraction of the light greens it would take to cover the entire circle is 12/12. Notice the circle did not change size. What happened was we started breaking it up into different size pieces. The larger the number became on the bottom, the denominator, the more pieces it took to cover it. Now you're going to go turn to page Math Journal 71. And in this, you're going to write equivalent names for fractions. So this is going to be a little difficult here at first. So I'm going to help you with a couple. So in order for a fraction to be equivalent, remember it has to cover the same amount of area. Well, if the number 0 is in the top, then every denominator number that you write would equal it. For instance, 0 thirds would equal 0 seconds because it's 0 out of whatever number. 0 fourths would also equal that. 0 fifths would equal that. I hope you're noticing how my handwriting is getting a little bit better. 0 sixths is equal to it. 0 sevenths, etc. You could go all the way up to 0 20ths, 0 100ths. Half. Well, if you cut a part in half, you could make the part smaller, and it would be 2/4. And again, now look at the top number is half of the bottom number. So any number on the top, the numerator, that's half of the denominator is also equal to half. So if we go up by 1 on the top, 3, 4, 5. On the bottom, we're going to go up by 2. 2 plus 2 is 4. 4 plus 2 is 6. 6 plus 2 is 8. And 8 plus 2 is 10. See the pattern that we created there. Again, 2 over 2 equals 1 whole. Whenever the denominator and numerator are the same, you have 1 whole. So again, here we go. 3 out of 3 would be 1 whole. 4 out of 4 would be 1 whole. You got all 4 pieces out of the possible 4 pieces. 5 out of 5 would be a whole. 6 out of 6 would also be a whole. Now we're looking for equivalents for a third. You should be writing these answers in on your math journal, page 71. Again, a third, we want something that equals a third. Well, here's another way you could do this. You could take the denominator times the number and the numerator times the same number, and you will get an equivalent fraction. 1 times 2 is 2. 3 times 2 is 6. That's an equivalent fraction for 1/3. Again, do it with the next number that we count up with. 1 times 3 is 3, and 3 times 3 is 9. So 3/9 is also an equivalent fraction. Now you should try it. Instead of doing thirds, the next number that would come in line would be fourths. So you multiply 1 times 4 and write your answer here, and 3 times 4 and write your answer here. And that fraction also is equivalent to a third. 2/3 do the same thing. For each of the rest of the fractions, I want you to multiply them by 2, both numerator and denominator, and make that fraction. And then when you're done, multiply it by 3. So do the next two equivalent numbers, fractions, for every problem that's left on this page. When you're done, please bring it back to me and let me check it to make sure that you did it correctly. So cover each region with fraction circle pieces. Use only one color at a time and try all of the colors. Record your work on the paper. So for this, I want you to get Math Masters page 102 and come back to me and I'll explain the rest to you. Pause the tape now. Page 71 is an assessment check-in. So please make sure on page 71 that you're showing me the rest of that page. So it says cover each region with fraction circle pieces. Use only one color at a time and try all of the colors. Record your work on the paper. Again, you should have that if you came up to me to get it. If you had hundredths in your fraction circle kit, what equivalent fraction could you find for a half? Well, hopefully you're thinking, well, in order to get 100th in my fraction kit, that means it's cut into 100 pieces. How would 2 become 100? Well, I would multiply it by 50. 2 times 50 was 100, so whatever I do to the denominator, I must do to the numerator. So 1 times 50 would be 50. That's how you know the fraction would be equivalent, because both numerator and denominator multiplied the same number, come up with your answer. Naomi has $8. Her sister had 9 times that amount. How much money does her sister have? First, write your number model with the unknown, because we don't know how much her sister has, and then write your answer. You're going to be doing this in Math Journal page 72. Pause the recording now, do Math Journal page 72, and then come and show me your answers when you're finished. Thank you. There's what Math Journal page 72 looks like. You should be pausing it now. These are the answers for Math Box 1 and 2, but I should have already checked that for you so you can continue on. For Math Masters page 105, fraction circles, you need to come back and get that from me if you haven't already. It says divide into 4 equal parts and shade in 1/4. Complete this page. Bring it back to me then so that I can check it for you. Pause the tape now and do that, please. There's what your page looks like, but you should be paused. There are the answers for 1 and 2. And your final thing is Math Masters page 102. Please complete that and bring that also back to me. Thank you. You are finished with lesson 3-2.